Tulis.
We argue here for local economy. We argue for local economy here and the free market. And we are loco-centric, which means that we think somehow in a whimsy that Chattanooga and Hamilton County, Tennessee, are the center of the universe. We are provincials. Okay, we are. You might say, narrow-minded. There is a kind of geographical bigotry that attends to such lines of thinking. I don't want to take the argument for local economy too far, because I think you can do that. It is more than anything, I think, a kind of poetical construct that recognizes, that has the advantage of recognizing how we're made, right? We're made in God's image. We are in the flesh. We are put into one particular place on the earth and in a particular time. And so we need to understand that we're not here by chance. You're not where you are by happenstance or luck or bad luck, if you will. You're here in Chattanooga by God's providence. And having that understanding, one can enjoy a certain resignation, I think, that Christian people have of being able to accept the place in which they've been put, even if it's in chains, right? Even if you are like Blandina the martyr, suspended upside down over a pit in which there are ravenous beasts that are beating your already tortured body. Even there, one like Blandina, I was reading in Eusebius last night, can be cheerful and glad and encourage people around her. See, that's the martyrs all said, well, don't call me a martyr. I've done nothing. There's only one martyr, and that is the Lord Jesus, who died for the truth. And we all just are copying his great work, and we are nothing. We are nothing at all. Do not honor us with that name. We are nothing at all. I'm talking here about the survivors of the martyring process, which lasted hundreds of years in the Great Tribulation under Rome. Now, this is David Tulis, and so you're here not by chance, not by happenstance, but for a divine purpose. And that I think is a comforting thought, even though you may not be a Christian. I assume you're not. It still is worth thinking about and putting yourself kind of in the context of being a creature and part of a design or plan larger than yourself, right? That is something that the Christian has a guarantee of, and it is a promise, and it is a great comfort to him, even amid distress, even amid loss, terror, and defeat. However, in the national news today, there is very little to suggest that. Now, we have the massacre at Las Vegas, and there are some questions to raise about that, but there are positive news in the Wall Street Journal today. There is a headline that should give pause, and it's so positive, it's so gleaming. Our national economy is so powerful and so winsome and so deep and so earnest, and has so many things in favor of, because we are, after all, Americans, right? That one should not have any doubts, any feeling of being oppressed in light of these reports. And that would be the equities market, the stock market. The headline in the Wall Street Journal, it says, "No end in sight for stock's longest streak in 20 years." And investors don't see many words ahead. The second paragraph says, "Daniel Kruger and Akani Otani are writing the story. The economy keeps growing at a slow but steady pace. Corporate earnings remain healthy, and investors are betting a tax overhaul will further boost profits. And inflation remains stubbornly short of the Federal Reserve's 2% target." Of course, when I read that phrase like that, I understand that they want me to think that, oh, too bad the Fed hasn't gotten to its target. So my money will be debased. It really does need to be debased in value 2% per year, right? It's like a 2% tax on everybody who holds Federal Reserve banknotes. And we bring this up because today's Cash Friday. Cash Friday is something in which we celebrate the power of cash, and we assert our independence. We go to the bank or credit union today, right? The first Friday of the month. You and I, and we each draw out $100. Now, that would be in a Federal Reserve note, a green rectangle, 250s or 520, 5 rectangles with 20s written on the front and back. There are number eight 20s. All right, altogether eight 20s written 8 times on that piece of green paper with the engraving on the front, or $100 bill. And the idea is to say, well, I'm going to assert my independence and my privacy. I'll withdraw that bill. And the problem is, if you and I do it, if I do it, no one's going to notice or care. I always like to have a couple $100 on me anyway. And I draw out cash as needed. But if both of us do it, you and me, well, there might be a warning, an alert sent to the central bank branch in Atlanta. Well, you may have to send up an armored car with some cash because $200 is being pulled out of the system. It's a system which is very brittle and has no cash in it to speak of. And so we celebrate cash because we want you, our listener, to spend cash supporting local economy, avoiding the tapeworm tax, which is the credit card tax on all these transactions. Very high, up to 2, 3, 4, 5%. So if you're going to buy a hamburger at Armando's in East Ridge, pay cash and save Armando's family, the Childeses, save them 2 or 3% on that transaction. They would be very grateful. So why have a transaction in which there's the national credit system, which is a tapeworm, collecting a fee off that innocent, harmless cash transaction? Why would you have a mortgage for a hamburger and fries anyway? Which is what a credit card use is. It's a mortgage on a sandwich. And a real man, I suggest, a real man would not only would defend girls being groped by cops in a mass search in a public school. A real man probably, if he starts thinking the issues as I try to, will probably say, I'll pay cash with that. Let's get her done, and not have the flagellum running after the transaction, propelling it into my records, right? And at the end of the month, not only is there no end in sight for the rising markets, which is boosted by inflation, the fear index, the CBOE volatility index, known as Wall Street's fear gauge, fell 4.6% Thursday. That's a big drop to 9.19, surpassing its record closing low of 9.31 set in December 1993. So right now, by all the institutional indicators, the American economy is at its acme, right? Its highest. Always got Acme products, the best product. It's at its very best. Now, are you going to believe that? Okay, maybe you will. Stock market gains have been broad, the Wall Street Journal says, spanning regions and sectors. Japan's Nikkei closed at its highest level since October 2015 on Thursday. The stocks Europe 600 rose for 9 straight trading days through Tuesday, its longest winning streak in more than 2 years. 11 major sectors are booming. All 11 of them in the S&P 500 in positive territory so far for the month. And yet there are signs of skepticism. The story says, of course, they always have to show the dark side. The non-compliant investor who may have his own ideas. There's a quote from David Tulis at a Chicago house called Oak Ridge Investments. The market's seeing smooth sailing ahead for the economy right now. He has $3.4 billion under management. Stocks are expensive, but with central banks remaining accommodative, he says that's helping indexes trudge on. Mr. Klaskin has been cautious, the story says, of fast-growing companies that are among the best performers this year. Those bets haven't paid off. Well, we live in an economy that is not a real economy. There is a lot of unreality in the marketplace, just as there seems to be a lot of unreality in other sectors as well. I try on the David Tulis program to inject reality and to be a kind of a healthy skeptic, right? And that's why I'm David Tulis. And said the city government would say this of me: whatever he tells you, he's not in the media. And Mayor Andy Burke and the police department are absolutely right. I'm not in the media. I'm not. I'm in the press. There is a difference. The press is protected under the Constitution, under the Bill of Rights. The media, I would like to say, is not. The press is, and I'm not a member of that. I'm a member of the media. So I am the skeptic. And believe me, David Roddy, the chief, making an announcement of his executive team. That email is not sent to me, right? So, and that's because the city government wants me to look at the higher issues, the larger issues. They want the local press outlets, the local media outlets to cover the routine stuff of David Roddy naming so and so, and they will not trouble me with that information. So what they're counting on me on doing is covering the details, going into the grind, and I really appreciate that, and not having to worry about the daily news flow, and that's I think that's a sign of respect. In a way, I'm not considered one of the herd. I'm considered somewhat below the herd. And in the upside down world of modern government, that's a compliment. Okay, I'm beneath the herd, and therefore, since they're viewing things in an upside down fashion, as the world at large looks at things upside down, I take that as a compliment. That in fact I'm above the others. But I'm not going to say that, but I just want to suggest that maybe they're saying that. Right? Let not others condemn you. Do not condemn yourself. Let others condemn you instead of yourself. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. So this is David Tulis, and I'm not. I want to suggest this about this market story, and this headline. You should not believe it, and therefore, there is no end in sight for stock's longest streak in 20 years. Therefore, you should not be there. Okay, you should not be there. As one of the big banking families, the Rothschilds, is quoted as having said something to the effect that when the bands are playing the streets and the trumpets are blaring and the confetti is falling, that's when you sell. Okay, that's when you get out. And when smoke pours off the horizon line and you hear the booms of cannon, that's when you buy. In fact, there is a biblical prophet who bought land before the Assyrian invasion, I think, of Jerusalem. He bought land, and he was buying at discount. Right? You should always buy a discount. So in preparation for that crash, that we have a guaranteed crash, and we really want it to happen, because when there's a crash, there will be a restoration of a more proper view of what real value is. And is real value created in markets like that, in the paper, the secondary markets for corporate paper? Is that a real value, or is that valuation driven up by the central bank? And that is the answer. It is the central bank. And Cash Friday is a day in which we practically live out that argument, and we do that by withdrawing cash. Now, $100, don't do more. I mean, if you and I draw out $200 in cash, there's going to be a real crisis, and it may even make a brief in a 6A, as they call it, a 6A in the Times Free Press, a little headline that says, cash alarm brings warnings at Atlanta Fed, but the system is not solid. It's not solvent, and there is debt guaranteeing debt. It is a long string of obligations, one to the other. It's very inflexible. It's very codependent. There's codependency in that series of relationships in the debt economy, right? In the paper money, illiquid and abstract economy. And I suggest that you be simple. Be a simple person like me, right? Ask the dumb questions like the press is supposed to ask. Ask the dumb questions, and ask, is my gain in the market real? All right? And I want to suggest to you that it's not. And if that's the case, then I would suggest the main. I don't give financial advice. I don't give legal advice here, David Tulis. But I would suggest this: that you divest national and invest local. There are now, you may not be rich enough to be a qualified investor, which means you have to have, I don't know, $1 million net worth and income, proven income of $300,000 or more. You're probably not one of those. I'm not. But you can still invest locally, and if nothing else, I would say cash, and I would say also that gold and silver are hugely undervalued vis-a-vis paper. So you can probably buy $1,000 worth of real money for, I don't know, $13,000 or $14,000 at the most. And just email me if you want to ask me a question about that. I do have a recommended supplier of silver and gold. It's the money changer, by the way. It does not ship to Tennessee. He is a mid-Tennessee publisher and bullion and coin dealer. Does not recommend numismatics, by the way. Well, so we have a high fear index, but Bill Haslam the governor it says he's not going to be running for the federal Senate because the system is broken, and the quote is something to the effect in the Chattanooga Times Free Press today that the system is broken because neither party can say that the other side has a point and let's get down to work. Well, if that is how things are unbroken, I think that Bill Haslam is underestimating the problem in Washington, the problem of gridlock. Of course, gridlock in one sense, in the political sense, is good, right? If things can't get done in Washington, that's good. But the things that have to be done that are essential to the survival of the government are impossible, right? They're not in view. They cannot be brought into view. There are too many constituencies for the status quo, the structural status quo, which is toward bankruptcy. There has to be a bankruptcy, and there has to be a great cataclysm where the federal government's power to jawbone the markets higher will have expired. It will have no credence at all. But until that turn, right, when the valuations start telling the people, the common people on Main Street, right, that hey, they're jawboning about our great economy. These reports in the press, Janet Yellen's latest testimony about easing up on interest rates and all that. This is a kind of oral dynamic that you're supposed to kind of think is kind of a screen put up between you and the real story. And of course, I'm not telling you the whole real story. I can't possibly narrate all that. It would take a lot of time to research it. But just looking generally at the economy and the way things are, particularly with government intervention in every market. In every market, there is major government intervention. Even in the silver and gold markets, there are attempts to persuade the trading prices between paper money and lawful money. And so my argument in general, the general argument for local economy and the free market here at Nooga Radio is that you should doubt them and have more confidence in us, right? Your confidence should shift. The little arrow pointing where that confidence lies should shift away from the good people and their institutional cohorts that really prop up these 5 or 6 companies that are leading these gains, right? Favored companies like Apple and Google. These are the ones where they're pulling the market. They're pulling the indices higher. So have doubt about them. Well, we are. So it is Cash Friday, and I just wanted to mention that. So today, your job from Nooga Radio and David Tulis is to go to your credit union or bank and draw out $100. Get a couple 50s. Hundreds are a lot for small shops, and then when you go and buy something, you'll get back $20 or $30 in change. I find that when I go to Aldi to shop, Aldi having really the best deals, the German grocer, I often spend more than $50 just getting a few essentials. I end up spending $60, but I walk out with bag after bag full, and so your cash will be used before you get home tonight. Your wife having texted you the list as I frequently get texts, and in fact, Jeanette, my wife, said yesterday, well, could you please call me or text me when you're leaving town before coming home, so that I can have you go and get Swiss cheese. Well, yesterday it was the Swiss cheese that I didn't bring home, and I didn't call her or text her when I was downtown on sales calls, and just headed home after a long day. And I should have texted her. But she still had a terrific dish that she made up on her own using I think mild cheddar. Very good dish, all concocted by her own hand, given what she had. So cash is good for that. Okay, cash is good for your essentials. And the more you go to cash, the more you go to freedom. So if you like freedom and want freedom, I suggest you, my listener, be manly about it. The good people say, well, if you have cash, you might get robbed. Well, crime globally and historically is going down, is continuing to go down, private crime. Now, public crime by public gangs and official abuse is increasing, especially in America, but with policing and sheriff's departments around the country abusing the people. And I've got some things I want to tell you about that are just typical, kind of in the direction of Hanson Melvin, right? The future mayor of Chattanooga, Hanson Melvin, who works in a grubby job at the Coca-Cola plant. He's the future mayor, and I hope you've heard about him. And look him up, by the way. His name is Hanson Melvin. The stories in the Walking While Black narrative. We have some things in that direction that I wanted to get to, and also the prospect in a minute here after my important commercial messages that touch on the Christian interest in reform. And there is Hanson Melvin's a devout Christian, and he's starting to see things that he had not seen before. And I think he's learned a good bit in taking courage. And in fact, I've been trying to dissuade Hanson from being courageous. In fact, I've sent him numerous texts. Hanson, please don't be courageous. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I've been telling him, but believe me, he's a man who has been courageous in one case, the Walking While Black case, in which Officer David Campbell got fired, and now Campbell's being sued by Hanson. But he's taken courage. He took courage there and demanded his right to be indicted, and he was an abusive, perjured indictment, of course. And now he's thinking of doing something else. So he's got some steps to make before he runs for mayor. A common man who believes in God and has taken confidence in God's grace to him. Really a remarkable story. So I've got some things in that direction. But even in Christian reform, and there's a story about a Christian effort at reform that was in yesterday's Times Free Press. And the headline, "Drug Court Recovery Centers Survive on Forced Labor." It came from the Reveal Project, an independent reporting project, which is available separately from the Times Free Press. And the Times, the TFP published a good piece of that story, but it runs about 3 times as long as what actually got onto the page in yesterday's editions. But it's a Christian reform effort that has problems. You might say moral problems with slavery, because the judicial system is inherently corrupt and godless. And so even if Christians get involved in the existing scheme, they run afoul of justice. It's almost impossible to avoid being holy and righteous, though the people who run the Simmons chicken factory that's highlighted in that story are devout Christians. They come up for a bad review because there is the appearance of slavery and unpaid labor of people who are trying to avoid prison, and they get into this care program, an alternative to prison. Well, I think the Christian effort is commendable, but I think what we have to do, especially if you're not a Christian, right, and you want to think about reform. A lot of Christians don't care about reform, though they should. But you, my listener, are not a Christian. You want there to be improvements. You want there to be justice. Well, I think we have to look beyond the current system, and we have to look at the post-state system of justice as Christian reconstruction and Christian rebuilding occurs. I don't know how much American Christendom wants that. I think there's a lot of resistance to having a godly society. Probably because some Christians think that if you have a godly society and work for it, if you say work for penal reform, that somehow you're rejecting the gospel, that you're just caring about works and things like that. These are just bogus points that I've heard. I've been personally made these points to, and they are simply bogus, and they come from people who are living in fear, not confident in God's law, not confident in God's grace, and the promise of progress, right? Christianity is the only system, the only system that's not human, that has a theory of progress. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, Digital FM 95.3